All right. If you're curious, here is my bizarre first experience with EFT tapping. So originally, I only went because I was miserable, not getting anywhere in my life, and I was desperate, right? But also, I had a crush on the guy who invited me. That was my weird friend. So he invites me, and he's like, "This is going to be really cool. We're learning this like technique where you tap different points on your body, on your face." And it's called, first he said it's called tapping, and I was like, is that like tap dancing? He's like, no, you tap different points, it helps with stress. And I'm just like, this is the craziest thing ever. And of course I walk in, and like, we're the only teenagers in the room. Everybody else is in like Birkenstocks and scarves, and they're all like middle-aged women, that was the vibe. And I'm like agonizingly uncomfortable. I don't know if that made sense. I'm like, it's so awkward. Like, I can't even express the awkwardness. But of course, everyone's very friendly, And I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Anyway, it was actually the founder of EFT tapping, Gary Craig, who now has like reached celebrity status, right? But back then, he was just doing workshops. We were at his workshop, and he taught us the steps, which I'll run through with you when we actually do the demo. And he said, come with something that you want to work on. And the key with tapping, a super important key with tapping, is being specific. You'll get far better results if you tap on a specific thing, like the argument you had yesterday, instead of like the entire relationship with your mother since the day you were born, right? So I came with like a specific argument that I had with my ex-boyfriend, and the breakup had been like a total disaster, but in particular, there was a specific interaction that was really, really tough. And there's this idea in EFT tapping that you tap on enough of the kind of specifics, and it's almost like if you could imagine them holding up a table. So let's say you have a fear of public speaking, or let's say I had like this real stress around the breakup, right? That's the table, which is on a bunch of legs of individual, specific, horrible things that happened to ultimately give you that like horrible feeling around the breakup or that horrible public speaking, right? Like fear, like that's the table, but it's made up of all these legs. These legs are the individual pieces. Anyway, I came with one individual piece. Sorry, one second, I have to cough. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna tap and do this process on this fight that we had. And it was like one of the most it was just a horrible, horrible fight where like the worst had come out about both of us, and he had just said the most hurtful things to me, and I would think about it, and I would just be so furious with him for saying that, with me for putting up with this crap for however long I put up with it, you name it. It was like a mess. And I walk into the seminar, right, and I'm feeling awkward. This is horrible. And Gary Craig teaches us the points, which I'll show you. They're not that many. It's easy to learn. You tap the points, you say certain things, I'll teach you. And then all of a sudden, I go back to like access that memory, and there's like no emotional intensity to it at all. And that's when I was like, I'm crazy. Obviously, this is a placebo, right? And then everyone around me is experiencing that same feeling, and I'm like, we're all experiencing a placebo. Like, this entire room is full of crazy people, yeah? But the truth is, it worked. And the crazier part was, I tapped on that specific thing, that like leg of the table. And then later in that same workshop, I tapped on another specific thing having to do with a relationship. And by the end of that workshop, having tapped on this different parts of this breakup several times, I walked out. It's hard to even believe, right? I walked out with like no emotional intensity on it at all. It was like it had happened. It was disappointing, but I had none of that hurt, none of that anger, none of that shame that I had been holding about my part in it, nothing. It was the craziest feeling. And for a while, I actually still thought I was nuts. I was like, I can't tell anyone this. Like, this is too weird. But I was tapping like secretly and not telling people, right? Because I had the points. They gave me the handout. I kept doing it. It took like years and years and years for it to come into the mainstream. It got to the point where as a counselor in high school, like it was just a couple of years ago that I was actually able to start teaching it in a high school where I was working. And now I do it in private practice as a counselor. But for years and years, this was like kind of a weird, cool secret. And now more and more people are getting to know about it. And I'm excited to share it with you too.